Hi everyone, good morning. I'm so excited for today's video because as you have seen in the introduction, I have with me the new Chikuhodo MK-SK brush. So this is the Maki-e Sakura brush. It is the newest brush in the Maki-e series of Chikuhodo, and this is the replacement brush from the MK2 brush, which I'll show you guys a little bit later in the video. Now the story about this brush, or like me purchasing this brush, is that I didn't know that Chikuhodo was actually releasing a new brush, and that day I went on fudebeauty.com because I was going to purchase the brushes that I presented to you guys in a previous video when I was doing some window shopping online. And when I got to the main landing page of Fude Beauty, I was so shocked that this was there. So I immediately purchased it without even thinking, and all the brushes that I was planning on purchasing that day went out the window. So I'm just going to decide when I'm gonna purchase those, because again, as I've always stated in previous videos, money doesn't grow on trees. And also one other thing, the main reason why I decided to get this is because one, I love Sakura. It's one of my dreams to see this flower in person in the future, hopefully when Japan opens. And also one other thing, I do not have plans of actually purchasing a lot of brushes from Chikuhodo. So what I'm doing right now is, I'm just collecting brushes that sing to me, and the Maki-e series from Chikuhodo do that exactly. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be talking about this brush. We're going to get to know this brush, and I'm also going to be showing you guys some comparisons to my other Maki-e brushes here that I have in my collection. And hopefully if you are you've been interested in getting to know more about the Maki-e brushes, and if you're interested in just starting your Fude collection, and I do really think that the Maki-e brushes from Chikuhodo are a nice addition to your stash. Alright, so what we will be doing today, aside from getting to know the Chikuhodo Sakura brush, I'm going to be comparing this to the other brushes that I have in my collection. So I'm going to see how the MK-SK brush picks up powder, how it applies pressed colored powders, things like that, and how it feels and how it compares to the other Maki-e brushes. So first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip my camera over and let's get to know this brush intimately. The Chikuhodo Maki-e Sakura brush came in a gold box like this. It's still the same gold box that the other Maki-e brushes come with, and I'm so glad that it came with this, because when I first bought the original Maki-e brush, the MK2 brush, it did not come with a box, and that kind of lessened how special, or it lessened the presentation on how special this brush was. So I'm glad that with the Sakura brush, it came in a gold box. Of course, the plastic packaging is still here, and you can still see the Kumano Fude seal here for authenticity, and of course the Chikuhodo pamphlet. And my friends, this is the Chikuhodo MK-SK brush, the new Maki-e Sakura brush. Look how beautiful this brush is. Look at that. Look how stunning it is. I love the reflectivity that we see off of it. It's so beautifully done. And this is the brush head. It is made of full gray squirrel hair. It's very, very soft. And you can see that it has it's flat, and it has a paddle-like design. And if we look on top, this is how the brush head is shaped like. It's more oval than the other brushes that I have. Well, I think I have one, but we'll talk about that later. Okay, so this is how the ferrule of the brush looks like. Look how shiny it is. Look how well lacquered it is and how well it reflects the light. And this is the Maki-e design that we see on the handle. Look at that. Look at all of that reflectivity. And if you just observe, we can see some of the shimmer that reflects off of the Sakura petals on this Maki-e design. It's either gold, or there are even like some that has like silver that changes into a much more rainbow color. Then the branches or the leaves are done in pink, which is amazing. And there's a sparrow here. So the setting of this design is actually daytime. Look at that. You can even see some of the leaves falling on the ground. That's so beautiful. Look at that. The Maki design on the handle wraps around the entire, well, not the entire handle, because there's a portion here where it doesn't reach, so there's a gap there. And also one thing that I've noticed is that the stamp mark of Teshu Takemori is horizontal. I wished this was vertical, the same way that the Chikuhodo brand name is stamped, because for me it's just like visually appealing, and it's like playing with my OCD brain, but it's no big deal anyway. Now, what else? Look, yeah, so the ferrule here is very well made. It's very smooth. You can't actually see the indentation or the crimp here on the base of the brush head, which is actually very amazing. And then you can actually feel this has quite a very nice full belly, and the base here is actually quite like, resilient. But the overall design of the brush head is actually like, very airy and very soft. So it's quite a well balanced brush head in terms of density, and it has a nice spring back to it. Very beautiful. So this, my friends, is the Chikuhodo MK brush, the Maki-e Sakura brush. Now, I do have to say that the Chikuhodo MK brush is a very soft brush. It feels very luxurious, just like any other brushes from the Maki-e series from Chikuhodo. Can you guys see just how well it follows the planes of my face? And as I've stated earlier, the design of this is paddle-like, so it fans in a much more wider sense. And at least this gives you the opportunity to apply powder in a much more wider sense. Like, on the face, it covers a much more wider real estate. Can you see how soft is that? Can you see how well the shine on this brushes is? Now the thing is, not everybody can use this, especially if people who have oily skin. If you have oily skin, using skrill brushes might not be a good idea for you. But if you do have sensitive skin, regardless if you're oily or not, this is a good brush to have, because it will not aggravate the sensitivity of your skin. It will just glide effortlessly and smoothly and softly on the face. So one thing that you just have to remember, if you decide to buy this and you have oily skin, the brush will pick up a lot of oil, and you might have to clean this more than the usual. And when I say clean, you have to deep clean it. You can use gentle soap and water, or gentle shampoo and water. Think baby shampoo. And if you're someone who's like a very heavy user of makeup, you might need to clean this with a much more stronger type of detergent, just to break down all the oils that would accumulate on the bristles of the brush. And one other thing also, if you do not want to actually clean your brushes, a lot of times what you can do is you can dry clean your brushes. You can just dip this brush on loose translucent powder, and you can just wait for the powder to seep some of the oils, and then you buff out the powder, and then you have a much more cleaner brush in your hands. Now what I'm going to do right now is that I'm actually going to compare this MK SK brush to the MK2 brush. So this brush is no longer in production, and this is the replacement brush that Chikuhodo made to fill in the gap on the Maki-e series. So I'm sure you guys are quite excited to see the difference between these two. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to flip my camera over, and let's talk about these two. So if we put the Chikuhodo MK brush right beside the Chikuhodo MK2 brush, we can instantly see the main difference of these two brushes. But I'm going to talk about the brush head design first, and if we can see and take a look closely, they both share the same brush head design. It has this flat paddle-like design, and if we look from the top, they both have this oval brush head design. Now the MK2 here still has a very decent belly, and it's still very soft and airy. And I can also say that for the MKSK brush here that I am holding right now, still quite, it has a nice bounce to it, the same way that the MK2 brush also has a nice bounce to it. Now, the main difference is just their brush head length, and the MKSK brush here has the same brush head length as the Chikuhodo MKUM brush here, but we'll talk about that a little more later. So these are the two brushes side by side so that we can just, see the difference of the Maki-e design. Look how pretty this is. And, they have a very different, the designs are very similar, but the flowers, the Sakura on the Maki-e design of the MK2 brush here has a much more pinky golden color, and it doesn't really surround like 80% of the brush, while the Chikuhodo MKSK brush here, covers around like 80% of the entire brush handle. So having these two brushes right now, although they are similar, but they're actually very different. The MK2 brush here is like the older sister, while the newer MKSK brush is like the younger sister. And I'm also glad that they're similar, but they're also different, because it would be redundant if the MKSK brush here is similar to that of the MK2 brush. And I'm just so glad that I was able to get the MK2 brush right before it was put out of production, because I really enjoyed having this brush. The Chikuhodo MK2 has been in production since 2015 until it stopped being produced, I think maybe last year. I don't exactly remember when it was pulled out of production, and I was a little bit sad when I heard news of that, because I was saying to myself, what would happen if I couldn't use this brush anymore, or if it just proves that it can't be useful anymore, so I won't be able to buy a replacement. So I actually placed this on storage here on my table. Now, when this is released, the MKSK2, I was so glad, because I have an alternative now. And as I have shown you earlier, they have very similar brush head types, but one is just smaller and denser than the other. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you guys how these two brushes apply and pick up powder products, because after all, these are marketed more as powder brushes. So I'm going to put these two brushes here, and then I'm going to get the powder products that I'm going to be using. I'm going to put the loose powder here, and I'm going to put the pressed powder here. Both are from Laura Mercier, and these are their translucent powders. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up the MKSK first, and then I'm going to lightly press it here on the pan. Let me fix this. And as you guys can see, this is how much powder this brush head picks up. Now, in comparison, this is the MK2 brush, and as you guys can see here, they almost pick up the same amount of powder, very sheer, and they concentrate the powder here in the middle, but that might just be how I was pressing it on the pan. So I'm going to lightly dust it here on my arm. Now, I've applied some foundation on my veiny arm, and I'm going to be applying the powder using the MKSK brush. And I'm also going to be using the powder found on the brush head of the MK2 brush just to set this foundation. And as you guys can see, there's not much of the powder product left on the brush head. Well, there's a little bit here on the MK2, but there's really none left on the MKSK brush. And as you guys can see, we just have a very thin layer of powder, very sheer, applied on my arm. So now what I'm doing is I'm going to use these two brushes with the loose translucent powder, and with the MKSK brush, I'm just gently pressing it, and as you guys can see, it picks up a ton of loose powder. And now I'm gonna use my MK2 brush, and it picks up roughly the same amount in just a much more bigger surface area on the brush head. So as you guys can see, they're almost the same in terms of density of the powder picked up by the brush head. So I'm going to first tap off the excess powder from the MK2 brush here, and we see some of the powder left here on the brush head. And I'm going to apply the powder using the MK2 brush here on my arm so that we can see how sheer this brush applies powder products. Look at that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the excess powder found on the brush head of the MKSK brush. And there's still a lot of powder found here. And that's understandable because after all, the MKSK brush is a smaller, denser brush than the MK2 brush. So as you guys can see that I'm brushing the brush head with the powder all over my arm, you can see that it's actually applying a much more stronger layer of powder, more opaque, more dense, and that's what we can expect from the MKSK brush. So we have to just be very careful, and it's again amazing to me the difference that these two powder brushes actually apply powder. Alright, so I'm just going to put these two brushes here on the side. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the other brushes that I have from the Maki-e series. This is the MKUM brush, the plum brush, and this is the MKKO, the koi brush. Now I don't have all of the collections, even the ones that are out of production now, but I just have these four. And if you're going to ask me to choose which is my favorite, I love them all, but I think the koi brush is special because I just love the pink handle and the symbolism it holds. Now, all of these brushes, by the way, have a full head of gray squirrel, all of them. And the first brushes I'm going to be talking about are these two because the MKUM brush, this one, and the MKSK brush almost have the same brush head length, and the only difference is their brush head design. The MKUM brush has a flat and a rounded brush head shape, and the belly is quite full and it has a sense of airiness, but it just tapers into a much more crescent shape, while the MKSK here has a much more fluffier and a paddle-like brush head design. It's also very airy here on the top. And then of course the brush heads are very different. The MKUM brush has a much more it's almost ovoid in my opinion, while the MKSK brush has a more oval brush head design. Now both these brushes have very, very soft brush heads, and you can just see how it goes back into its original shape after I played my fingers on the brush head. And I'm quite surprised on the strength of the belly here, which gives this brush head the bounce, this MKUM brush, its bounce and its ability to just conform to the planes of my hand. And also with the MKSK brush, it still conforms with the planes of my hand, so this will work well on the face. So it's an amazing brush. Now the MKKO brush and the MKSK brush have very different brush head designs. Of course the MKSK is more oval while the MKKO is more round. We can also see that there's a difference in brush head length. The MKSK is a bit shorter than the MKKO brush. And you can see the difference on the way that the brush head goes back into its shape. There's a fullness of the belly here of the MKKO brush, which makes this brush a little bit more resilient and stronger than the belly here of the MKSK brush. Now the MKKO and the MK2, the older Sakura brush, have the same brush head lengths. Again, their brush heads are very different in design, but both of these brushes have very soft brush heads. It's still amazing, and it's just so unfortunate that the MK2 is no longer being produced because this is such a good brush. So for the next part of my video, I'm going to put the MK2 aside because I can't compare it anymore to the other brushes because we can't purchase it anymore. Okay, so now let's compare how these three brushes apply colored powder. So this is the color From the Moon from the Sailor Moon X Color Pop collection. I love this blush. I like using it for these things. Alright, so I'm going to apply color now, and I'm going to start by using the Chikuhodo MKSK brush, a new brush, and with the color on the brush head, I'm just going to wiggle it here on my skin. And as you guys can see, the MKSK brush delivers a very delicate wash of color on the skin. Very diffused. And now I'm going to pick up the MKUM brush, and with the same amount of pressure and hopefully the same amount of color, I'm going to apply it here. And I think we can also see that the MKUM brush delivers a very delicate color on the skin in comparison to the MKSK brush. And I think want to add a little bit more color, so I'm going to pick up more. So at least we know that it's actually buildable. And you can also see, I'm sure because of the light you can't, but it actually delivers a much more targeted color application on the skin. And now with the MK KO brush, I'm going to apply it here. And I'm just going to wiggle it into my skin. Again, we still have that very delicate color. So I'm going to pick up some more. And I'm just going to build the color, so at least we know that we can build it. So the MK-KO brush will actually deliver a much more stronger color. I'm sure you can see it now here on my arm in comparison to the MK-UM brush and to the MK-SK brush. But at least it still delivers a very delicate wash of color on the skin, because after all, this is a full head of gray squirrel hair. So let's see if I can add more intensity. Yes, you can build it, but it's still maintains that very delicate wash of color. Again, this is the main thing that you will get when you are using full gray squirrel hairs. You can always get a very delicate, well blended wash of color on the skin. How cool is that? So again, I want to show you guys the way the MK-SK brush here deliver this color. The edge here is very diffused, well blended in comparison to the color delivered by the MK-UM brush, and of course the MK-KO brush, this very wonderful brush here. I really love this, it's very nice. And I just find it so amazing that these brushes deliver different finishes, even if they are made of gray squirrel hair. And I know you can't see it because there's just too much powder on my arm at the moment, and of course there's just so much light going on, but at least you guys can see the difference on how these three brushes delivers color individually. Now, in terms of price, the Chikuhodo MK-SK brush retails for $161, which is actually not so bad in terms of price, because like for example, the MK-KO brush, when I first bought this when it was released in 2020, this retailed for around $181, I think, if I remember. But right now, there's a price deduction for this, and I think it retails for around $159. I'm just not so sure because I'm trying to remember at the top of my head, and if I didn't get the price right, I'm just going to flash it here at the bottom. So yeah, very, very pretty brush. And also one other thing, the MK-UM brush, this also retails for around $159, I think, or $157. I'm not too sure. Again, I'll flash it here. And this is again a very beautiful brush, and I love the brush head design here, and you can just have like a very nice targeted application of powder products with this brush, but in a much more delicate manner. And these, my friends, are the three most recent Maki-e brushes from Chikuhodo that are currently in the market. I think some are currently out of stock, but I hope that they would be restocked soon because these are very beautiful brushes. And I don't think that the Chikuhodo MK-UM brush or the Chikuhodo MK-KO brush will be out of production anytime soon, because these two were released very recently, like sometime in 2020. But yeah, for this video, because the star of this show is the Chikuhodo MK-SK brush, I do recommend that you get it if you want to add it into your collection. And if you're someone who's just starting your collection, having one of the Maki-e brushes is nice to have, because it does set the standard on what a nice Japanese handmade brush is all about. Good quality, amazing beauty, nice materials, and nice products, and you get your money's worth for it. So that's it for me today. I hope that you guys enjoyed me showing you guys the new Chikuhodo MK-SK Sakura brush. It's a very beautiful brush, and also I hope that you also enjoyed me comparing it to the MK-KO brush, the MK-UM brush, and to the most recently out of production MK2 brush. Now, if you have any more questions, please leave them down in the comments box below. And also one other thing, I do have everything linked down on the description box, including the prices. So if you're interested, go check it out, and maybe that might be very helpful for you when you want to decide if you are going to purchase the new MK SK brush. Alright, so that's it for me today. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope that you're having a good day wherever you are. Bye!